afternoon, Internet. First of all, let me address the elephant in the room. Yes, I am the grumpy old git, but due to circumstances beyond my control at the moment, I don't have access to the old channel. Hence, this new one. Sooner or later, I will get access to that channel back again, and I'll sort things out from there. One of the last videos I did on the old channel was the battle between the two cruisers, the Vulcan S and the Morbidelli 1002V. The Vulcan S won that battle and maintained its place in my garage. However, there was another cruiser over the horizon, and that one had the Vulcan S completely outgunned in just about every department. That cruiser was the 2017 Indian Scout, and that has now replaced the Vulcan S in the garage. So today I'm just going to do a bit of a talk about it. When you talk about American motorcycles, a few names immediately come to mind: Harley Davidson, etc. And one of the most legendary among them is Indian. Long before the modern cruiser wars, before the big V-twin rivalry defined the roads, Indian motorcycles were already carving their place in history. And among all the machines they've ever produced, one name has always stood out: the Scout. Today I'm making a deep dive into one of the most compelling versions of that legacy, the 2017 Indian Scout. This is a motorcycle that blends heritage, performance and accessibility in a way that few cruisers manage to achieve. Whether you're a lifelong rider, someone curious about American V-twins, or just someone who appreciates beautiful machines, the 2017 Scout deserves your attention. So settle in, because over the next 20 minutes or so we're going to explore the design, performance, riding experience, bit of the history, and why the bike became one of the most beloved cruisers of the modern era. The original Indian Scout debuted in 1920 and was designed by Charles Franklin. It quickly became one of the most respected motorcycles of its era. The Scout was known for reliability, speed and handling, qualities that helped it dominate racing and long-distance riding alike. By the 1930s, the Scout had already become an icon. Riders trusted it, racers pushed it to its limits, and the name itself became synonymous with American motorcycling excellence. But like many historic brands, Indian eventually faded away in the mid-20th century. For decades, the name existed more as a legend than reality. That all changed when Polaris Industries revived the brand in the 2010s. Instead of just recreating old machines, though, Polaris made a bold decision. They would build modern machines inspired by the past, but engineered for the future. And in 2015, the modern Scout returned. By 2017, the Scout had fully established itself as a cornerstone of the Indian lineup. One glance at the 2017 Indian Scout, and it's immediately clear that this motorcycle respects its heritage. The silhouette is unmistakably classic: low stance, long wheelbase, minimum bodywork, and that signature teardrop tank. But look closer and you'll notice something interesting. This is not a retro bike trying to pretend it's from the 1940s. The Scout is a modern machine in every way possible. The frame is a lightweight cast aluminium instead of the traditional steel cruiser frame. Indian opted for a more advanced design that improves rigidity and reduces weight. The engine itself is a stressed member of the chassis, which helps centralise mass and improve handling. Visually, the bike is clean and uncluttered. The lines flow smoothly from the tank to the seat and down to the rear mudguard, or fender for our American friends. The engine becomes a focal point of the entire design. And that engine, polished, muscular and symmetrical, looks like a mechanical sculpture. The dual exhaust pipes sweep along the right-hand side of the bike in classic cruiser fashion, giving the Scout a strong visual balance. Another important part of the design is the seat height. At about just 25.5 inches or thereabouts off the ground, the Scout is incredibly approachable. Riders of many heights and inseams can flat-foot this bike with confidence. That low seat contributes heavily to the bike's popularity with new riders and experienced riders alike. But don't mistake accessibility for compromise. This motorcycle has very serious performance hiding underneath that classic look. At the heart of the 2017 Indian Scout is a liquid-cooled 1133cc V-twin, and this engine is a major departure from traditional American cruiser motors. Instead of a big air-cooled pushrod design, the Scout uses a modern overhead cam setup. It has 4 valves per cylinder, liquid cooling, and revs much higher than most cruiser engines. The result? About 100 horsepower. That number alone makes the Scout stand out in its class. Torque comes in strong as well, at about 72 pound-feet, giving the bike plenty of punch off the line. But the real magic of this engine isn't just the numbers, it's the way it delivers the power. Unlike many cruisers that run out of breath early, the Scout loves to rev. The red line sits at around 8,500 RPM, which is incredibly high for a V-twin cruiser. Twist the throttle and the bike pulls smoothly through the rev range, building speed in a way that feels almost sporty compared to traditional cruisers. And because of the liquid cooling and modern engineering, the engine feels refined, smooth and predictable. No excessive vibration, no overheating in traffic, though it does get to about a toasty 95-96 degrees. But it gives you steady, reliable performance. The Scout comes with a 6-speed gearbox, which pairs perfectly with the engine's wide power band. Shifts are generally smooth and precise, and the clutch pull is light enough for everyday riding. Power is delivered to the rear wheel via a belt drive, which is typical for cruisers, but still worth mentioning because it keeps maintenance low while maintaining smooth operation. Altogether, the drivetrain makes the Scout feel extremely user-friendly. It's easy to ride slowly through city traffic, but also comfortable cruising at highway speeds. Scout, the first thing you notice is how low and planted it feels. Your feet reach forward to the forward controls, although not as forward as some other models. Your arms stretch comfortably to the handlebars, your body settles naturally into the bike. The riding position strikes a balance between relaxed and engaged. It's not a lazy, feet way out cruiser posture like some heavyweight tourers are. Instead, the Scout gives you a slightly more active riding position, which helps with control and manoeuvrability. And that becomes especially noticeable once you start moving. The Scout's weight, at around 560 pounds wet, which is relatively light for a cruiser with this engine size, combined with the aluminium frame, the weight feels very, very well balanced. And cornering is surprisingly capable. Now, it isn't a sports bike. Ground clearance is still limited compared to performance machines, but within the cruiser world, the Scout handles very well, with about a 30-degree lean handle. It leans predictably, tracks smoothly through the corners, and inspires confidence. Riders often describe the Scout as one of the most fun cruisers to actually ride aggressively, and that's a big reason for its popularity, as is indeed the case with the Kawasaki Vulcan S, a very fun bike to ride. The 2017 Scout uses conventional telescopic forks in the front and dual shock absorbers in the rear. The suspension setup is fairly straightforward. In the front, you get about 4.7 inches of travel, and in the rear, about 3 inches, unless you go for the Bobber variant, which only has 2 inches of travel. That rear travel number is one of the few areas where the Scout gets some criticism. Because the seat is so low, the rear suspension has limited room to work. On rough roads, bumps can feel a little harsh. For many riders, upgrading the rear shocks becomes one of the first modifications. But on smooth roads, the ride is comfortable enough for cruising and everyday use. The Scout uses a single 298mm disc on the front, with a 2-piston caliper, and another disc in the rear. And while not spectacular, for everyday riding the braking system performs quite well. It's not superbike level stopping power, but it's more than adequate for the Scout's weight and performance. ABS was available on many models, as it is on the 2017 Scout, and adds an extra layer of safety, especially in wet conditions. Another aspect of the Scout that deserves attention is customisation. Cruiser riders love to personalise their bikes, and Indian leaned into that idea very heavily. The Scout platform became one of the most customisable motorcycles in the lineup, with riders adding things like a different seat, mini ape hangers, large windshields, performance exhaust systems, saddlebags, passenger setups, etc. And because the Scout's design is relatively simple and clean, modifications tend to look great. It's a blank canvas for riders to make their own. Now let's talk about what it sounds like. Out of the factory, especially the new bikes, the Scout has a relatively restrained exhaust note. It's deeper than many other modern bikes thanks to the V-twin configuration, but emissions regulations, especially in Europe, mean it's quieter than many riders expect, which is why aftermarket exhaust upgrades are extremely common. Once opened up, the Scout produces a rich, aggressive V-twin growl that matches its performance much better, as it is on my 2017 model, as you can hear when you listen to it on this video. But who is the bike for exactly? The 2017 Indian Scout sits in a fascinating position in the motorcycle world. For beginners, it can be an approachable entry point into larger cruisers. The low seat height and manageable weight makes it less intimidating than many of the big V-twins out there. Although, to be honest, I would say an 1133cc engine with 100 horsepower is still way too big for a beginner rider. For experienced riders, it offers performance that many cruisers simply don't deliver. It's quick, it's responsive, and it still has that classic cruiser look. This combination means the Scout appeals to a huge range of riders. Young riders, veteran riders, daily commuters, weekend cruisers. It's a motorcycle that doesn't lock itself into one specific area. Another reason for the Scout succeeding initially was its pricing. Compared to many heavyweight cruisers, the Scout offered strong performance at a relatively reasonable price, for an American premium brand, that is. That made it accessible without sacrificing quality. And because Polaris invested heavily in the Indian brand, the build quality and reliability were generally very strong. Over time, the Scout platform expanded. Indian introduced variants like the Scout 60, which used a smaller engine and lower price point. Later came models like the Scout Bobber and other styled variants. But the core Scout remained the foundation. The 2017 model sits right in the middle of that early modern era, when the bike had already proven itself but still felt fresh. In many ways, the Scout represents a shift in cruiser design philosophy. For decades, cruisers were defined mostly by tradition. Air-cooled engines, heavy steel frames, low red lines. But the Scout proved that you could keep the spirit of American cruisers while embracing modern engineering. Liquid cooling, high revving performance, lightweight construction. Riders responded positively, very positively. Today, years after its release, the 2017 Scout is still widely respected. Used models remain popular, owners often keeping them for years on end. And the bike has built a reputation as one of the most well-rounded cruisers in modern motorcycling. It's stylish without being gimmicky, powerful without being overwhelming, and classic without being outdated. So if you step back and look at the bigger picture, the 2017 Indian Scout accomplished something important. It didn't just revive a historic name. It proved that heritage and innovation can coexist, which is something Harley-Davidson found difficult to learn. That you can honour a century of motorcycle history while still building something modern, fast and exciting. And that balance is what makes the Scout special. Because at the end of the day, motorcycles are about more than numbers and specifications. They're about feeling. The feeling of the engine beneath you, the wind rushing past as the road stretches out in front of you, the connection between the rider and the machine. And the 2017 Indian Scout captures that feeling beautifully. A modern motorcycle with the soul of a legend. And for many riders, that's exactly what makes it unforgettable. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It helps us a great deal. And I will see you next time. Keep the rubber on the road, people, and enjoy the rest of the ride.